The next item on the agenda is number 7, and it's a presentation on Jobs for Nature, Conservation Board, and Kappa schemes. So we've got Owen Kilgour here. We've got Mike Legg, the chair of the Conservation Board again. Good to see you back, Mike.
Thank you.
And Joy Connie, Comrie. Welcome to the meeting. Really appreciate you coming along, and the floor is yours.
Thank you.
And if you could do it from the
Good afternoon, Mayor Smith and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. My name is Owen Kilgour, and I've recently taken on the role of Operations Manager for Department of Conservation in the Westland District. Thank you, Chair, for introducing my colleagues. There's a few things to talk about today. The Conservation Board, Jobs for Nature, and Kappa schemes. So starting with the Conservation Board, if I may briefly just talk to the purpose and structure of the board before introducing newly elected board chair. So the board, skip a slide, sorry. The board's primary role is to advise the department and the New Zealand Conservation Authority on matters within its jurisdiction. Sorry, she skipped 2 slides, so we'll go back. Conservation boards are independent bodies. They're established under the Conservation Act, so they're not part of the Department of Conservation. And its membership is appointed by the Minister of Conservation. When those opportunities come up, they're advertised and people have the opportunity to apply to be appointed as members of the board. The board fundamentally provides the interaction between the public of in this case, the West Coast at a regional level and the Department of Conservation, and they contribute that local voice into the DOC context. So their primary role is around advising DOC and the New Zealand Conservation Authority, and their main focuses are matters of policy, strategic direction and planning, and they're heavily involved in review and creation of these guiding documents, the Conservation Management Strategy and National Park Management Plans. Now, what the Conservation Board doesn't do is get involved in day-to-day DOC management or its operational work. Let's talk specifically about the Westland District Conservation Board. There'll normally be 11 members on the board. There have been 4 recent appointments to the board, and you'll probably be aware 3 resignations, so those are current vacancies. And the Minister's intention is to appoint 3 new members within the next month. The board has a newly appointed chair, Dr. Mike Legg, who's with us today, and Mike has been chair of the board previously. If I may, Chair, I'd ask Mike to briefly introduce himself.
Yeah, Mike Legg.
excuse me, Mike, could you come up with
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
just for people who are zooming,
Oh, yeah, of course. Sorry.
they want to see your handsome face?
Oh, well,
Yeah.
only once. So yes, my name is Mike Legg, and I've probably been chair for about 2 months now. We've had 1 full meeting with the board. We had 1 meeting, which was essentially where I was elected, and then another meeting a couple of months after that. And I'm basically looking forward to getting the board going, essentially. There's a lot of tasks ahead, and I'm very keen to get the new members on board, which we spoke to the Minister about on Saturday, to try and get the process moving. And we intend to have a planning day in November, which we will then set the board agenda for the next year. And we are waiting for the letter of expectation from the Minister. The Minister sends out a letter of expectation to boards once a year. It's been delayed this year, so we're waiting for that letter. And for the first time, as far as I'm aware, the Minister is going to make them board specific. Usually they're very generic, So when we get our letter, it will be relating to issues on the West Coast, which I'm really pleased about because it gives us a focus to work on. My expectation, and I've already made this point to the board already, is that top of my list is the CMS and the Westland National Park Plan. And also I want to get the board to work on Section 4 of the Conservation Act, which is an important area for us to have in relation to iwi. And I would like very much to be able to work in partnership with iwi on the coast, as we have done before. And I look forward to that in due course once we get the board moving. So I think probably here in a short sort of summary, that's it. I'd like to come back to council at some stage and let you know what our plans are and where we are heading, because I think it's important for council to know, just what the Conservation Board is doing. And I would look forward to having that conversation at some stage. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Is there any questions of Mike before you then?
Sorry, yeah, just one question. Like the CMS, what's the estimate time?
I would have done it in 2 years.
Thank you.
No, it took 20 years to get it before, so yeah. So we'll just take a 0.
Thank you.
The process for reappointing the vacancies.
Yes.
Is that an advertised process, or is the minister just going to be advised on appropriate appointments?
Yeah, so the minister will be appointing from a prior list. So this year, I understand we were fortunate, there was a lot of people apply, and there are some very good people who didn't get appointed. And so the New Zealand Conservation Authority and DOC have asked the minister to appoint off that list. And I've seen some of the appointees and potential appointees, and they're exceptionally good.
Thank you.
Paul.
Thank you. Just a comment, really. Firstly, on the CMS, 2 years, that will be very much on the fast track.
We did Kappa already.
Yes, the CMS, as you pointed out before, Mike, was the previous one was glacial. Anyway, the big issue that will really rub with this council is the Westland National Park Plan, which was underway and then on that. But there are some major issues that have come into play, such as the glacier access is now not what it was when the review even started. When the review started, there was foot access to Franz, and there was a road right to the to Fox Glacier no longer. Then, of course, there's the biggie, which is the helicopters, and at both townships, huge issues to grapple with, and so that's going to be a major challenge for the Conservation Board. There are opportunities, of course, with that. It's not all problems, but this is as big of a challenge as the master plan for Franz Township, in my view.
Thanks, Paul. I fully agree. We started the review of the Western Park Plan while I was still chair at last time, and I see that we can probably run the CMS and the Western Park Plan in parallel to a point, and I intend to have a board meeting down at Glaciers early next year.
Mike, we have a really solid relationship with iwi, and it's a very important part of this council. I'm hoping that that relationship will flow into the Conservation Board, and that you can become a significant partner with this council going forward. it's very important, I think.
Thank you. I would say the same. I always see it as a partnership, and you know, with all partners, you have fallings out, if not. But you know, I really enjoyed my time as chair previously. I really enjoyed working with you, and so now I want to sort of re-establish that connection and to work closely with councils, because I think it's essential to get, you know, for the coast, basically.
You know, we've said if you fall out with Iwi, you fall out with us.
Not very much.
Good to hear, Your Worship, but I can reassure you that Potini Naito are very happy to have Mike back in the chair.
Oh, we all are. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Well, look, thanks very much, Mike.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just very briefly picking up on Councillor Davidson's point, the department intends to initiate that review of the CMS before the end of the year.
Thank you.
So moving on to Jobs for Nature projects now, and just very quickly to give context on that, Jobs for Nature, of course, was a government initiative post-COVID recovery or for sustaining employment in a COVID situation. The model being that people are employed to deliver conservation outcomes through partners. So DOC and other government agencies administer that fund, but it's the partners that lead the delivery. There's a few projects I want to tell you about, and some of them are partly funded by Jobs for Nature, and existing projects are funded in Waterways as well. And the first is the Arohura Strategic Waterways. So this is a project that brings several projects together. It's been running for a couple of years now. And this is all about an integrated catchment management approach for improving the health and the communities around the Arohura River. The projects that are running already are the Na'awa project, which is led by the department. We have a couple of rangers appointed specifically to that role. The focus there is around reconnecting or connecting mana whenua to the awa, and also around the environmental health of the river. And there's quite a lot of work being done under that project around establishing baselines for the health of the river. The next one is a project led by Mawhera and funded by the Provincial Growth Fund. That's a 4-year project. They're 2 years into the project now. Thus far, they've fenced around 14 kilometres of river and planted in the order of 34,000 trees. In the end, that'll be over 100,000 trees planted. Just looking at how it all ties together. So on the surface at the bottom, you've got the 2 projects I've talked about already, and then 2 Jobs for Nature funded projects. There'll be a project led by Mawhera, which is really there to complement the work done already under the PGF funding, and then another Jobs for Nature one, which is the establishment of a nursery, which will provide trees for this project and potentially other Jobs for Nature projects. So looking specifically at the Jobs for Nature project, you would have probably heard the announcements from the Minister last week, $3 million, 11 people employed over a 4-year period. There'll be fencing of the waterway, providing alternate water sources for stock, which previously would have taken water from side streams, planting trees. The people employed in this project will receive industry training in horticulture and fencing. We've got 8 landowners on board, and they'll be making contribution in kind to the project. And then there's that nursery I mentioned, being delivered by the Whitiwhiria Trust, and they're leasing some space at the Southside Nursery. The next one, the last point on the Arohura. When this work is completed, it will be the first fully protected river from mountains to the sea in New Zealand. Now, the next one, the Sustainable Whitebait Project. This has been delivered by the West Coast Regional Council over a 2-year period, a $1.4 million project, creating 13 jobs over those 2 years. And the intent there is to increase whitebait stock through enhancing whitebait habitat right throughout the West Coast. And that's done through weed control, fencing, and also creating spawning sites, creating channels, and removing barriers from fish passage between adult habitat and spawning sites. The pictures at the bottom, that's Cobden Island, so that's an example of work that's been done already, not under this project, but similar, and then Wadestone Island on the right. So of particular interest in Hokitika, of course, is the Wadestone Island project, which is a project that's been run already over a long period of time between your council, DOC, conservation volunteers, New Zealand, and funding from Westland Dairy. And where this project is different from the wider project is it's more of a concentration around habitat for adult whitebait rather than spawning sites. The area it's covering is around 18 hectares. It's a mixture of council land and DOC land, and there's planting in there, there's weed clearing and creation of channels as well. And the project's very much set up in recognition of this site being an important green space for Hokitika and improving its amenity value through the creation of a dog exercise park, walking tracks and the like. The next project, this is a massive, exciting project, predator-free South Westland. That's funded from a whole range of sources, Jobs for Nature being one of them. So that's a 5-year project looking to eliminate possums, rats and stoats over 100,000 hectares between the Waihoa and Whataroa rivers in order to protect taonga species in that area. And the benefits of this project are wide-ranging from the fact that if it's successful, then there wouldn't be a need in the future to run large-scale aerial predator operations. Removing possums, that's removing the main vector of that spreads bovine tuberculosis, so obviously a lot of interest to farmers, and it will enhance the Southwestland experience and the brand. The approach for that is picking up on the methods used successfully by ZIP, zero invasive predators in the Perth River, and rolling them out over a much greater area. The delivery model, Predator-Free Southwestern Limited, which is a charitable company, has been set up. And that's got a board of governors with the independent chair of Katie Milne and representatives of Te Runanga o Mkawhio, Totahitaki, Ki Te Uru, Next Foundation and ZIP. So there's a lot of jobs come with that, 23 jobs from ZIP. And then Jobs for Nature is going to be looking at funding another 15 positions. And those positions funded by Jobs for Nature will focus specifically on ground-based predator control on private land. So getting a lot into the farmland there. Down the bottom there, those are just the partners in the work and funding of this work. This is the area it will cover. So on the right-hand side there, you've got the Perth Valley where ZIP have already successfully eliminated those predators. They're working in the Butler now. And after that, they move into Area 1 on the left there, which is South Okarito, and they're putting together a plan for the wider area. The area was selected because of its high natural value, the fact that there's natural barriers existing to stop the reinvasion of predators, and an engaged and largely willing community to participate in this work. So obviously, the community involvement is really crucial here because of the amount of private land involved. The next project, Sustaining Southwestern Communities. So this is something that was stood up immediately after the last lockdown, with the intent being of finding a way to keep people engaged with their employers, with their businesses, so they can go out and do conservation work when they don't have other work to do, but when their businesses need them, when there's visitors in town, they can do their normal work. Just a couple of pictures at the bottom. You've got Cliff from Glacier Valley Eco Tours. He's out in the Okarito forest clearing kiwi tracks when he's not able to do tours. On the right, that's a group of skydivers who have been working on the Alex Knob track. So $3.9 million over 3 years. Around 42 businesses are currently engaged, which is around 75% of Southwestern businesses are participating in this. So currently 114 people's employment is being supported. There's also a partnership with Te Runanga on Kawhio, which is enabling mana whenua to carry out conservation work within their role. Really broad range of conservation work being undertaken by this project, everything from building tracks, track maintenance, weed control, pest control. There's inside work, people are listening to recordings from acoustic recorders, looking for species. A real highlight was the rediscovery of bats in the Alberito forest, which hadn't been seen for a long time. Another project funded through Jobs for Nature is weed-free typotony. This has been led by Development West Coast with technical input from DOC, the Regional Council and iwi. $3.3 million over 2 years, looking to create 21 jobs over that period. But the focus there is removing weed threats from natural ecosystems, and that'll be done through a contract which is being established with NBC. Now, NBC, of course, are a Westport-based company where the work is occurring in Westland, but the majority of those jobs will be based out of Hokitika. And Ngāti Waewae are generously supporting that and enabling them to hold their meetings and the like of the marae. Locations there, the key focus for this work will be within the World Heritage Area and the national parks. It's going to span both public conservation land, private land and Māori land, and the real focus is on these areas of high ecological value. Quite a broad range of weeds being targeted. I won't go through them all, but there's quite you've got from pampas in a coastal environment moving up into photocarp forests, and then the low alpine environment such as Broome, which is working its way up towards Arthur's Pass. In terms of the work that's actually being done, I mean, the starting point is surveillance and mapping where weed infestations are occurring and putting together a plan. So knocking down weeds and where there's areas of high infestation, and again focusing on those vulnerable ecosystems. And there'll be quite a focus as well on mine sites where there's a large open space and a lot of potential for weed incursion. Final topic around the Kappa scheme. So this is not a Job for Nature project, this is a DOC project. A little bit of background. Kappa skinks are a nationally critical species. There's around 300 individuals remaining, and they exist over a very small range of a coastal strip in the Kappa area. DOC's been monitoring them for quite some years, and they're very susceptible to mammalian predation. When Cyclone Fahey came along, they lost around 40% of their natural habitat. So a decision was made quite quickly that some of those skinks should be gathered, and they were relocated to Auckland Zoo, and the knowledge that another cyclone was on its way and there could be more habitat loss. So that's the skink we're talking about. Now, DOC's had a project running because, of course, we can't just relocate skinks to the zoo and leave them there. So they need to be reintroduced into their natural habitat. And because of that risk of predation, they've been building a predator-proof fence. So DOC's purchased around 1.3 hectares of land. They've put up this 1.5 metre fence around around a hectare of that land, which is partly on the land that's been purchased and partly on council road reserves. So that's been a joint effort that we're grateful for. There's a pest eradication operation running as we speak to get rid of rodents within the fence, and once that's complete, the skinks will be able to be reintroduced into their habitat. So that's a really nice opportunity for DOC and council if they wish to come together in an event for the reintroduction of those skinks. Just a little look at where it is. So the purple area is the fence, and yeah, that's the fence itself down the bottom. It's a stainless steel mesh with a cap along the top of it. That's the end of the presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Well, very comprehensive. Just a couple of points. Thank you very much for the assistance in getting Wadestone Island across the line. That's something that obviously we've been on it for a year, and a great outcome. I was in Friends yesterday meeting the young people there from Sept, and they're from Auckland, Tauranga, all around the country. And you talk to the business owners, and they're really grateful to have them there, becoming a big part of the community. So I think that's fantastic. And Jobs for Nature has been the most innovative way of handling a problem that I've seen from the government department. Very innovative, works, when you talk to the businesses, it's worked really, really well. It's open for discussion. Deputy Mayor Brothers.
The 5-year project, $46 million one, to eradicate the pest and so on, presumably that won't stop in 5 years, because in order to cement in the gains you're making in those areas, you're going to have to keep extending beyond those or maintain those. So presumably, whilst it's got a term of 5 years now, in reality, it'll go on ad infinitum pretty much, won't it?
The real key to that project is around the natural barriers to prevent re-incursion. We've got the rivers in the alpine zone, but there would certainly need to be ongoing monitoring. I'm not going to claim to be a massive expert on the projects, but yeah, those natural barriers are the key to why they've selected that and why it is a sustainable project.
But you don't know whether it'll extend beyond 5 years at this stage.
I couldn't tell you their plans for going.
Paul.
Kia ora, Alan. Alan, of course, is no stranger to Westland, and he was previously, he hasn't pointed out, but he was previously the lead officer at Fox Glacier. So we've had a lot to do with Alan over the years. So it's good to see him moving up here now to bring that same good attitude. There's some real good projects that are underway at the moment, and where do you start here? The Aotearoa River one is, this is a massive undertaking and a huge turnaround in attitude from the government towards the Aotearoa River, where last century it was stolen. Or put it in my term, and for 110 years it was run by the Crown as any other river, and until it was finally returned to Potini-Maito into the Mawhirun Corporation in 1975. Anyway, and the river has been degraded over the years. You've had the cows and all of that issue. You've got the weed invasion and everything, and so the whole catchment was changed over the years. That it was outside of iwi hands, and now it's come back. I mean, it's fully in iwi hands, but there's now a whole reversal of that. Degradation over 100 years, and it's great to see. And it's it's a long-term thing. It's not going to happen overnight, but the end result will be something for future generations. I can't speak highly enough of that one. It's just a great project. The Sustainable Whitebait project is another one. Of course, that's right throughout Taipōtini. But the Wadestone Island. Just one question there. We did talk about this at the Kotaito Kituru meeting. But the weed control of the willows. So the willows obviously need to go. They're going to be poisoned and whipped out, turned into firewood, which is great. But I just wonder if this is in conjunction, of course, with the local whitebaiters, because they use those willows for shelter on a rare windy day down the river. It can be pretty windswept, and without the willows, I just wonder about that, or is it going to be progressively eradicate those wires?
So I don't have a specific answer to that. What I would say is that the Waterways Association has certainly been very involved in the development of the project, and council will be, district council, who are leading this work on Wadestone Island, are hosting a meeting week after next, and that's where the actual plans of exactly what's going to be done and how will start to be developed. So I don't know that it's locked in at this point in terms of what's happening.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I'd love to see them all go down there and get rid of them over a weekend, but it'd be pretty barren without them, while the other trees are growing in their place. Yeah, and the predator-free Southwestern, well, yeah, so we're involved with that, and that's a very ambitious project with an awful lot of money behind it, government and private money. The Next Foundation is a huge backer of this, so something like, correct me if I'm wrong, Owen, something like $50–60 million all up. It's behind this predator-free Southwestern. It's huge money.
I think 46 million was the number we had on.
Oh, 46. Oh. Yeah. So, and the Sustaining Southwestern project through Kappa for Nature as well has been a godsend for the glaciers. And it's kept some of those businesses kept the doors open, and so it's really innovative, and big ups to Wayne Costello for driving that one. Thank you.
Great presentation, Owen. Nice to meet you. Yeah, and just a couple of things from me. The first one was so good to actually see percentage-wise 75% of businesses now actually being supported with that Jobs for Nature down in Southwestland. This funding could not have come at a better time, especially now with us currently going through 2 lockdowns in a lockdown country. And that's awesome work. The only concern that I have, because I think that's great what we're doing over with Wadestone Island, but we have quite a big flooding issue over there. So how are we going to resolve that if we're going to go ahead with doing the whole plantings?
So that's certainly been taken into account in terms of that flood channel and keeping that open and functional. In terms of the plantings themselves, I mean, the flooding is a natural process that would go through the plantings, and we wouldn't expect them to be destroyed by it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, a massive flood maybe, but we're restoring a natural ecosystem, a natural environment. It will do as natural processes do.
Yeah, no. I just thought I'd raise that because, over the years, obviously, we've seen that place turn into a bit of a swimming pool. So, white bait lover.
So I always answer that quite briefly. You see about those natural areas with cockatiel and other shrubs that were growing on floodplains, which move through and they have it sold, so that they should be fine.
Yeah.
Except that there's a current.
Thanks, Owen, for your presentation. Huge amount of work going on in Dock. I just have a question around the other projects, not the Jobs for Nature, where the jobs are being created. I think there was a 13 in the Whitebait project. Are they predominantly local, sourced locally if you can?
For all of these projects, the intent is absolutely to employ local people wherever possible. The whole point of Jobs for Nature is around sustaining employment in the local communities.
That's great, thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Owen, thank you for your report and your presentation. I should directly say. It's great to see the work of the department, and it's really good to have Mike here to talk from the Conservation Board's perspective as well. So thank you. I have no questions. I'm really aware of these projects, and I think it's awesome for council to receive this update on this mahi. Thank you.
Francois.
I know nothing to add. Owen knows my views on this. I've been, out and about, just thanking these guys so much for what they're doing. It's an incredible job, and I can't say enough. So just, yeah, thank you.
Councillor Kennedy.
No, thanks, Owen. Just in terms of your the weed free project or whatever you're looking at now, the Southwestern Freshwater Management Unit, your biggest concern is the weed in Lake Paringa. So I'd like to see maybe some funding there to try and tackle that. I do have a suggestion. Paul alluded to it earlier in terms of the access to the Franz Joseph Glacier, and maybe you can look at using the high level tracks up the valley as the primary access to view the glaciers. And the other thing is, Zip, it's got its detractors. Every time I see Duncan and Ash, I am kind of hassling them to give the council a bit more of a in-depth look at it, and they assure me that at some point they'll request a presentation. Cheers.
Councillor Hartshall.
Yes, thanks, Owen. I'm very familiar, as you know. I'd just like to quiz you on a couple of things, and now you're an operations manager, you might be able to be a carrier pigeon for some of the businesses in the Southwestern. It's absolutely fantastic work that's going on. There's absolutely, there's millions of dollars being spent, which is great throughout the West Coast. But I think Ryan and Paul touched on it. Jobs for Nature is fantastic. It's keeping people in the town that work in the jobs. But I'm just passing on what we're getting from Franz Inc. and everyone's saying to me that is actually a business owner. The one thing that will help them is access up the valley. And that we're talking very small numbers to the numbers that we've just been talking on this whole presentation today. So I just wonder if you can pass that back through to the appropriate people. The businesses are borderline, but their workers are doing well, which is great. The second thing I'd just like to touch on, if you could pass it to the quiz back to the right people, is when do you think the department is going to look at moving their staff housing off the fault line? We've got, it's a fault line here that everyone is panicking about, but we've still got our staff living on it. We need the government to start moving our essential services, the fire brigade, the police, and DOC, or start the whole process going. So I'm just wondering, there's millions of dollars being spent, and within that little budget there, to move your staff housing is very, very small. So if you could be a carrier pigeon and sort of try and pass that message on to the right people, get back to us even as a council, as a business group in the town, if, DOC are looking at moving their staff. Thanks, Owen.
Message received. Councillor Neal.
Yeah, no, thank you. Very good. Very interesting. Are there any other areas in New Zealand that are receiving the same amount of work and projects?
So the Jobs for Nature program is a massive nationwide program. I don't want to speak to numbers of our region versus others, but certainly it's a nationwide program. The area we have been a little bit unique is in that sustaining Southwestland and that it was rolled out very, very quickly. And that timeliness, of course, was important to its success. So we were definitely a leader in that space.
Councillor Davidson.
Yeah, thanks, Owen. They're just fantastic projects to be involved with. I mean, it's a really exciting stuff like the Yarrahura project, you know, from mountains to the sea, and the strategic waterways restoration project. You know, it'd be just really exciting to see the final outcome of that. You know, great work. And in terms of the willow problem in Wadestone Island, Jobs for Nature, I think Mother Nature will take care of that one. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Davidson. Look, Owen, Mike and Joy, thank you so much for presenting. We'd love to see you do it again. It was very informative. And I mean, there are some huge projects underway. So really appreciate it, and thank you so much for attending.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, councillors.